Before I jump straight into the video, two things. One, this video will contain some spoilers from mid-game. To be specific, leading up to the Blood of Arlathan quest, which, for those who don't take note of the quest names like myself, is the one where you get to save the daily shelves from a certain eldest of the sun and his ever supportive cult of murdering blood mages. I am not going to say anything beyond that particular quest, so if you have finished the quest, you can rest easy on that. There would be no spoilers for you. If, however, you haven't gotten to that part of the story yet and are trying to avoid spoilers, then yeah, this would be a great time for you to close this video. 2. And I can't believe I have to make this disclaimer, but alas, this is what YouTube has become. These are my opinions, my personal opinions. The thing about media analysis, which is what videos on my channel aim to accomplish, is to bring my point of view to certain conversations based off of my interpretation of whatever I'm giving an analysis to. Whether it's happenings within a movie or TV shows, a book, anime, or video games, which are all things I cover on my channel, by the way. So if that interests you, consider subscribing. But as I was saying, these are perspectives based off of how I choose to interpret the piece of media. You can agree or disagree with my point of view, because media analysis is meant to be subjective. Art, and yes, video games count as art, is meant to evoke different emotions in people and have people give various interpretations to what it's trying to say and the message at its core. This is especially the case for RPGs, which, unlike a lot of other games, are often driven by a narrative. So like I always say on this channel, do remember that opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. This just happens to be mine. And with that said, let's talk about Elgar'nan and Solas and how they are two opposing sides of a coin, which, let's be honest, is the reason why they're in such big conflict with each other for millennia. Now, I know, before you rush to type in the comments, I'm aware that Solas has been revealed as a wisdom spirit in the game. A couple of weeks ago, when my rook uncovered all of Solas's memories, which, quick plug-in, I do have a Let's Play channel where I am currently documenting my present playthrough of Dragon Age the Veilguard. I'll be done with it this month, after which my patrons will get to vote on if they would rather I document my Cyberpunk 2077 and Phantom Liberty DLC playthrough, or my at long last nightmare run of the entire Mass Effect trilogy. Whichever they choose will start going up come January. But as I was saying, I am aware that Solas turned out to be a spirit of wisdom and not pride, as a lot of us in the fandom had theorized. But I still find it interesting and fitting that his name still means pride in Elven. And I think it quite suits his characterization. However, what has been stuck in my craw ever since that scene was the question that had been burning in my brain. Since we have it confirmed that all the Evanuris used to be spirits. That Solas was a spirit of wisdom before he took on that form, which, by the way, makes his companion quest in Inquisition hit even harder for me now that I realize that part of the reason he was so upset that his friend was pulled out from the Fade and thus corrupted was because that is another spirit of wisdom like himself, brought into this world when they didn't want to be. And gods, that hurts. Replaying Inquisition after Vilgard is going to slap so hard. But back to the point. We learn that Solas was a spirit of wisdom. Deduce that Mythal was a spirit of benevolence. And so I was curious, and this is what has been stuck in my brain, about what kind of spirit Elgar'nan is. Is he the spirit of vengeance, of tyranny, of power? But not just any type of power. Is he the conceit that can be found in power? Now, all of that was swirling in my head as I tried to puzzle and figure things out. Until yesterday, when I was playing Blood of Arlathan, and we got the delicious, absolutely delicious conversation between Solas and Elgar'nan, where the former was taunting and mocking him to get a rise out of him and thus serve as a distraction for Rook to escape Elgar'nan's mind games and free the captured Dalish elves from certain death that would have been them being offered to his archdemon as a sacrifice. And whilst I had Rook running around trying desperately not to die, this seems to be my default state, by the way, every time I come in contact with the Enquiries in this run. So, whilst I was running around trying to keep Rook from dying, I was also eavesdropping on Solas's conversation with Elgar'nan, because I'm nosy like that. But also because, like Rook tells Solas, they are legit arguing like family. Family members who do not see eye to eye on a lot of issues. And in a way, I can understand the why of that. Having the Enquiries start out as spirits meant that they have to stay true to their innate nature. And when that very nature is corrupted by virtue of them taking on human forms and thus, well, not human, elven forms, and thus the frailties that come with that, which they never should have, then it warps the very essence of their being and what they are meant to stand for. Benevolence turns cruel at a perceived ingratitude from those she wants to share her gifts with, like a monarch, like a tyrant. Wisdom becomes pride because of the self-satisfaction born out of being right, of knowing more, of being wiser than others, and the frustration of your words of wisdom not being attended to or listened to. And power. Power turns from what wins wars for the sake of the people to being ego, the belief that you are owed loyalty, fealty, godhood for what you've accomplished. After all, who has your power? Who has your reach? Who is able to accomplish what you have done? You are a god, and they will kneel, they will bow, they will obey you, they will worship you. Like Solas says later in his conversation with Rook, after you've helped the Dalish to freedom, and he is thanking you for having helped them, Solas, pride, admits that he wins by trickery, by casting illusions and manipulating the truth and the situation to what suits him best, to what works best to his strength and what he is capable of, born as a result of him having studied the situation with the wisdom inherent in the pride you take in what you know and know well and are good at. Elgar'nan, on the other hand, wins his victories through sheer force, wielding his power like a cudgel to bludgeon anything and anyone who stands in his way, because he is powerful enough to do so, because he is capable of accomplishing that, because he knows no one else can match him with that power. And the thing about ego that evolves from raw power and pride that evolves from wisdom is that pride is aware of its limitations. Pride is wise to what it can accomplish. Pride knows that a lot can be made possible if things are aligned just right. And pride takes pride in that. Ego knows that it has the power to mold the very fabric of reality into what it wants. It knows the depth of its power. It takes pride in that fact. And that is where Elgar'nan and Solas come to a fundamental conflict that they would never be able to resolve. Because what fuels who they are at their core is the other person on the other side of the divide. Elgar'nan, ego, is driven by the belief that he is the best, that he is better and superior to everyone else, and that it only makes sense that he is not just king by virtue of what he is capable of, but that he be a god. It started initially as pride in what he's done, in his accomplishments, and then tipped its way into ego. Because who else can do what he's done? Who can accomplish it? Who can stand in the face of all that he is, the force of his might? Nobody. That is what drives ego. The belief that he stands at the pinnacle of the world and nobody else can have the same power as him. It is why in the distraction scene in Arlathan, Solas warns him that he runs the risk of being wielded and turned into a puppet by the blight itself. Because the thing about ego is that when it gets that inflated and is left unchecked, it miscalculates. It doesn't have the wisdom to see what is coming, to see the dangers in the path it's chosen to take, and so therefore runs the risk of being utterly defeated and crushed, either by the very same weapon it had wielded, i.e. the blight, or by the throwaway rook piece that showed up and that it had previously discounted as being utterly insignificant. Solas, pride, on the other hand, does have a bit of an ego. I think it's disingenuous for anyone to try and state otherwise. Because ego doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Ego is a sense of self, an understanding of what you're capable of who you are. Solas is aware of who he is, of what he can offer, and what he is capable of. He might not have the brute force of Elgar'nan, but he does know how to use what is available to him to achieve success on his own terms. Pride and ego are intertwined. They see each other better than any other spirit can. They recognize what the other is capable of, what they are really about, And I do think that that's part of what drives the enmity between Solas and Elgar'nan. Solas sees in Elgar'nan what he has the capacity to become if he allows himself to be thus twisted. It's why when you explore his memories in the quest, Disrupt and Conquer, and Felasan accuses him of sacrificing the spirit of disruption by tricking them all into believing that they stood a chance in breaching Elgar'nan's fortress, when all the whiles they were merely a distraction for Solas and his agents to retrieve the relic that Elgar'nan was protecting. Solas responds to Felasan that disruption should be grateful that he died doing what it was meant to do, rather than being twisted into something worse off. It's a heartbreaking scene indeed, as it shows that Solas at this point was changing into a being willing to do anything to get the favored result, which is clearly a response to the all-consuming power of the Evanuris that he was fighting against. But at the same time, it gives an inkling into one of his fears. Not his biggest fear though. We see that in Inquisition when we are in the Fade. But it is clear that one thing he worries about is becoming twisted into something or someone he no longer recognizes. And I do personally feel that the added weight of realizing that it can easily tip from pride into ego is part of what weighed heavily on him. And Elgar'nan's rage is at the audacity of pride, acting like it's better than ego, acting like it knows better just because it used to be wise. I find that, I don't know, interesting. What about you? Do you see the similarities? Did that same thought hit you in the blood of Arlathan? Or maybe you realized it even earlier, which is cool. Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and what I had to say, please hit the like button. If you didn't and you think everything I had to say was horse shit, then hit the dislike button. Either works for me. Anyway, it's the internet, and we don't have to agree on everything. If, however, you did enjoy this video and think others should get the chance to see it too, do consider sharing it. It helps my channel reach a larger audience, who in turn might find that they like my little corner of the internet. This in turn would help my channel grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my Patreons who have been pretty instrumental in helping me keep the lights on. Thank you. If you would like to support me on Patreon, the link to do so is in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whilst you wait for new content from me, do consider checking out my last Vilgard video, where I talk about why the choice of which city to save between Minrathous and Treviso is more an ideological choice written to further strengthen your role-playing as Rook. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.